Welcome to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. We are on a mission to interview women and the occasional token man about how their passion and purpose have collided to create healthy relationships and profitable businesses. I'm Elizabeth Denham here with Rebecca Monet. We are the co-founders of the Coterie for Women and the co-publishers of the Franchise Woman magazine. So Rebecca, how's your week?
Thank God it's Friday, right? Holy moly, this week was like a whirlwind. I cannot believe. Productive week, right? A fun week, but I'm like, did I have time to sleep? Did I have time for anything to do with, me personally?
Probably not. Do you ever?
Well, okay, you're right.
I'm just asking. I mean, that's kind of why you have a theme of fun for the year, because you're not having any. So
time for some fun.
Yeah, I think this is a little check-in time. Have you had any fun? Have you penciled it in? I'm thinking that's a no. I take your silence as a no.
Oh,
and this is pot and kettle because I haven't either, but this is your theme. So
okay, Miss Tornado of Joy. What about you? Have you had any joy this week?
Not tons. I am right this second, maybe. This is it.
That's it. This is our fun right here. Poking fun at each other. So what was your rose and thorn this week?
Well, I think it's the same thing. The same kid, Jake, who is 22, is helping my husband out. My husband's got a Patch Boys franchise. So before he can send the drywall people in there, they've got to do some cleanup and demo. It's a house that a friend of ours bought, and there was just trash. It was like a mild hoarding situation, and the people just abandoned the house. And so I have been so entertained by Jake, because Jake and a couple of his friends are rotating who comes and helps, and all they're doing is shoveling stuff into dumpsters. I mean, it's heavy work. But it's easy, and it's college student, don't mind doing it. So they've been working on it for a couple of weeks now, I think. And they've gotten 12,000 pounds of trash out of that house.
Wow. Like that's crazy.
2-ton dumpsters so far. I told Donald, I'm like, you better tell them they did that. No wonder he's been tired and sore. But he has learned the story of this family that abandoned this home through going through their stuff. So he's found yearbooks. He found account ledgers from a guy's business. And he's like, I think he must have either quit working or died in this year, because that's when the ledgers stopped. Wow. And he's sort of done. I'm like, well, are you actually loading the trash in? And he's like, well, he's like, it's so boring. You've got to do something. And they're finding, like, they found a military a patch insignia type thing. And they were trying to figure out what that was. And so then when he would go home, he would look them up on social media and see who they could find. And it's just been the most interesting. He's like, so they had a kid, and that kid was biracial, and the family is white. And there was this whole neighborhood controversy because they had this biracial child. And wow. he evidently, through his yearbook quotes, they found that he struggled with his identity. And the neighbor came over and said something about, well, those mixed race children, they just want a handout or something. And Jake's like, this is becoming so much clearer now that I'm seeing the atmosphere that he lived in. So I'm getting this whole soap opera that Jake has learned through the trash. So that's been highly entertaining for me in the last couple of weeks, because he's told me all of this amazing stuff that he's piecing together. And he's like, it's kind of sad because I'm going through their yearbooks and their papers and their ledgers, and they left it all. And now it's going in the dumpster. So anyway, that's my rose, because I'm so entertained at his curiosity about trying to piece all of this together.
He's like a detective. He's piecing the life of this family together. This is so fun.
It's like a little genealogy kind of thing through the trash. But he is funny. He's so intellectual all the time and so curious. And to see him, that's how he's getting through this manual labor mundane job, is piecing together this family's story.
This is a great story. I love it.
It's so fun. So my thorn is that he called me during our interview with Joe Mathews, and he says, and then he texted when I didn't answer, and he goes, when's the last time I had a tetanus shot? And I said, I don't know exactly. Call the doctor's office. And I said, why? And he goes, I stepped on a nail through my shoe. It was a big old fat nail.
Ow.
He's got hazardous duty But anyway, hopefully I said call the doctor and find out, because I know he was at least 12. He might have gotten another one his senior year. I'm not sure.
They'll give him another one.
Yeah. But anyway,
That's a funny way to tell you. He didn't say, "Hey, Mom, I stepped on a nail," and blah, 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 blah. He asked,
when's the last time? I'm like, so clearly I know something is up.
Suspense.
And this is all happening in the middle of the podcast. Hold on. Are you bleeding? Are you good? All the way through this little shoe. So
what a riot. I can't wait to hear more about this detective story, and
it's so fascinating. And it's culturally significant because of this white mixed race child in a white neighborhood in Alabama.
In Alabama, of all places. Yeah,
there were a lot of, and he said some of the language was kind of dated, the way that they were referring to themselves and other people back in the 80s or whatever. And, things you wouldn't put it that way now.
Yeah.
So he's just a funny kid. I got a big kick out of him and his
I like him already because I love a curious mind.
Yeah, he really is. He's very engaged with this whole, every time he calls me, he gives me a little update on what he's discovered. So that's my rose and thorn. What about you?
Well, as you know, I'm now officially addicted to Facebook Marketplace.
Yes.
And
I've heard
all these cool things on Facebook Marketplace. The problem is I don't have an SUV. I don't have a truck to go get these fabulous things. And on Marketplace, it's kind of like what eBay used to be. If you don't get it now, it's kind of gone. And I'm competitive enough that that's not gonna work for me. So, and then of course, add to it, we've had snow, so we are locked in. I'm not going out with my little bitty car, so I'm dependent on my grandson-in-law to go to a city about an hour from him and then another hour to me. So it's like a 2-hour drive for him to pick up what I think is a gorgeous divider, a turquoise divider. And I have a few addictions, one of which is rugs and the others is dividers. To me, they're art. Both of these things are kind of art. And the woman that was selling these things was horrible on the Marketplace. She doesn't respond. She waits several days. She set an appointment for us to come get it. Then she doesn't show. She doesn't text, email.
She needs a bad review.
And so, can you do that?
I think so.
Marketplace. Oh my God.
100% sure. I think there must be a review system there, though.
There has to be. I know, like on eBay and whatever. But I was just getting crazy frustrated. I'm like, you're being unprofessional. Why would you sell something if you're not going to communicate? Mm-hmm. And I kept emphasizing, it is an hour's drive to you. So if you make an appointment,
you better be there.
She doesn't show, doesn't say anything. Several days later, oh my gosh. Then we set up a second one. Same thing happened again. Anyway, I was finally so ticked that when my grandson-in-law says, okay, are we on for tomorrow? I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. The thing must be a piece of crap because
now you just got a bad attitude toward the little, whatever it is.
I don't want that stupid thing in my house now. I'm just going to have bad feelings about it.
Got bad juju going on about the divider.
Bad juju. But you know what? The rose in all of it is, as stubborn as I am, he's a bit more stubborn. Ooh. And he was
going to get that thing.
He was going to get it. He said he was going to get it for his grandma Becca one way or another.
Well, good for him.
Yeah. So he made arrangements, called her himself. Boy, why is that so hard? It's a him and her. whatever. And it's beautiful.
Oh, good. So
after all my temper tantrum, it's exactly what I wanted.
Oh, well, good.
Yeah. She's a turkey seller, but the item she sold was fabulous.
Well, at least that worked out. Because if it had been junk, like you were
I would have been mad.
You'd have been mad.
Yeah.
So it all worked out.
Ta-da!
Well, yay.
Yay.
The saga concludes with a happy ending.
That's right. We love happy endings.
All right, welcome back to the podcast where passion and purpose collide. We are here with our special guest of the week, Joe Mathews, who is founder and CEO of Franchise Performance Group. Joe has been in franchising, sales, and leadership roles since 1985, working with such companies as Subway, Fantastic Sam's, Marco's Pizza, and many more. In 2002, he founded FPG to study and document what he calls franchise's winning formula. He's written 5 books on franchising, has been featured in dozens of articles on franchising that have appeared in USA Today, Fortune, Business Week, and many more. In his spare time, Joe is aspiring pickleball champion and expert teller of dad jokes. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
I could have done without the last line, but yeah, thank you.
It's humanizing. You like to throw a little touch of spice in your life into your bio.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I had no idea about the pickleball. So what you also are for us today, Joe, is our token man on the coterie for women and the franchise woman, and we're Passion and Purpose, which is largely viewed by women. I'm not saying this to have you curtail anything you're going to say. I'm simply letting you know we really appreciate you coming on as
Not at all. And what the listener is going to find out is I have 4 brothers, no sisters, went to all boys schools, and count my mother, grew up with no female influences in my life. So this ought to be fun.
Wow, you ought to have a very unique perspective then.
That's for sure.
Yeah, or I'm going to get lynched. Yeah, one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, brace yourself.
All right.
So we were going to start off talking about one of the things that's been very important to you as a thread throughout your life, which is being pro-entrepreneur. How did you come around to that? Is that something that you've always had the spirit for? Is it something that you learned over time? I don't know that most kids dream of being an entrepreneur necessarily right off the bat.
And I'm not sure I did either. There's kind of like 2 small defining moments. So I grew up in a kind of a lower middle income, very ethnic Italian, quite frankly, kind of mobbed up neighborhood. Not good mobsters because they could afford to move out, right?
Right.
These were the schemers and the
low level mob. Yeah,
exactly, right. That's kind of how I grew up. And my dad was the only college educated guy in the neighborhood. And we got by, but it was paycheck to paycheck. And my mother sat me down one time when I was probably about 10 years old. And she said, we have enough, but we don't have more than enough. And if you want anything, you're going to have to find a way to earn it. I said, okay. And for me, it was not a big deal. I went out and I got a paper route. Now, the paper route was a business. I would actually have to buy the newspapers from the printer and then sell them at a markup. And if my customer pay me, I'm 10 years old. I eat it. I eat the margin.
Right.
The newspaper got their money. Not really recognizing that was entrepreneurship in its purest form, right? It was a direct sales and a route, recurring revenue. And I did that for a whole bunch of years. And I bought my bicycle and a baseball bat. I made $8 a week, banked 5, spent 3. That was my pattern. And I just kind of had that, I would call that individualism, rugged or entrepreneurship. It just kind of carried forward. But we had no entrepreneurship in our family. My dad lived in the same house, and my mom and dad, they've been married now, they're going on 60 years. They've all lived in the same house for 40 something years. My dad had the same job for 40 something years. These were not change agents or high risk takers. But when my first job out of school, I was lucky enough to get on with Subway when Subway had 350 restaurants. So I was there in 1985, and Fred DeLuca was my first boss. And the interview was something like, hey, kid, do you want to sell franchise? I'm like, yeah, sure, what's a franchise? A franchise is a method of distributing products and services. That was your training, by the way. Here's your stack of leads. Go make some phone calls. I literally had no idea what I was doing. I get these little lead forms. They're written. I pick up, I make a call. And about my first month into the job, I saw that people didn't want a franchise. They weren't there to talk about Subway. They were there because their lives were broken or their career ladders were leaning against the wrong wall. They weren't going to achieve what they're looking to achieve. And what I saw early on as a marketer is I wasn't really marketing a franchise. I was marketing their dreams and aspirations back to them as a reality if we did business together. And I remember this one conversation I had with myself. It was about 30 days into the job. I said, what better job can I possibly have than answering prayer, than marketing people's dreams back to them as a reality? I remember saying to myself, I'll never get that anywhere. I think this is all I'm ever going to do. You know, and that was 35 years ago. And this is all I've ever done. You know, I just really have great respect for the risk of the entrepreneur and how people put it all on the line. Like these guys aren't making, most of them aren't making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Most franchises don't do more than $500,000 in sales or thereabouts. You know, they're out there, you know, just slugging it out, earning a living, but who else has to pay or invest for the right to earn a living, right? You know, so, you know, they do it for the reasons we all know. And I've got nothing but props for what they put on the line, their ability to take on risk, and quite frankly, to live with intention and to live a life and a career that they're designing for themselves and their family. And I don't think I see them as heroes every bit as I would see somebody in the military as a hero, every bit. And one of the things that really irks me, I hate when people say franchisees aren't really entrepreneurs, because they're really an entrepreneur, they would do it themselves. Yeah, I'm just calling bull crap on that. You know, people who say that have never started a business, mostly, right? Yeah, so there's my rant. Yeah, check that box. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about today.
There you go.
Four more to go. Yeah.
Stop, right? You know, it's interesting. As an entrepreneur myself, I love the view that you have, that you got to, as a young man, give people their wishes, their aspirations. It was like the best job ever to help somebody go into business. But there is that argument out in the world of franchising that franchisees aren't entrepreneurs, which you disagree with. But is there like a degree of entrepreneurial spirit? I mean, can someone be too entrepreneurial and still be in franchising? I guess the word too. But
yeah, well, I would probably answer that a little differently than you asked if I could be so inclined. I would say it's about fit.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So some people are really entrepreneurial, do not belong in a system where there's no creativity, and the systems are really defined, and the processes are all put together, right? And everything is the way it's supposed to be. Like so McDonald's, for instance, right?
Right.
You know, they just got to button down, figure out. Well, if I'm a pure entrepreneur, which I'm going to define as a creator generator,
right?
Okay, well, that's more of a replicator. Driver replicator type model. So that may or may not be a fit for me. Right. But I don't think that there's anybody that's too entrepreneurial to be in franchising. And I'm going to say that maybe there is, but I would say most people could find something they fit and succeed in.
So it has more to do with, like you said, fit and the stage of growth that franchisor is in, where the earlier stage franchise systems, there is more room for creativity and thinking outside the box and that true entrepreneurial spirit coming out and expressing itself. Or later, like the example you gave with McDonald's or something, there's not that room for that. It doesn't make sense to do that. Instead, you want to leverage those particular system.
Yeah, again, so if somebody's very entrepreneurial and they want a seat at the table and they want the CEO's cell phone, right? And they want to be, they want to have a say in how things are run. Yeah, that's more of an early stage or emerging growth type franchise.
Right.
Yeah, once you get to 100 units or more, you know what? They're going to lose your cell phone number. Talk to middle management.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting, and because my husband bought a franchise last year from someone who's kind of an initiator. He was a token man a couple of times ago, and he targets people who
I've never heard the expression token man before.
haven't?
No, I have not.
All
Well,
about branding. It's all about branding, Joe.
It is.
I don't know how I feel about this.
I tell you what's funny. We started it when I first launched the Franchise Woman magazine. I said it as a joke to my sister who designs it for us, and she's like, "I totally think you should do it." And so I did, and I asked a few men to be the token man, and I had them lining up in droves. You tell someone that there's an exclusive 1 man per issue, 1 man every month on the show, and they were lining up. So it kind of took off its own little personality. It's been fun.
But we're very picky about our token men.
Not just anyone can be the token.
Very picky.
Well, thank you.
I'm gonna let you in our inner circle. You got to meet certain criteria. You know?
Well, I appreciate it.
So you better represent your gender well.
That's
Wow.
right.
I haven't yet, but it's the first time for everything.
Hey,
Yeah.
we're gonna see a whole new side of you, Joe.
Hey, yay me.
Oh my goodness. So this conversation about entrepreneurship, of course, is fascinating to me, but it always kind of overlaps this whole idea of the free enterprise system and the value of the free enterprise system and capitalism and all of that. Now, I have some strong opinions on that. Elizabeth has some strong opinions on that, but I want to know what your opinions are.
I don't care about capitalism.
I don't believe
No, elaborate. What's the question? I didn't really.
So the question is, what is your opinion about this form of capitalism here in the US of A?
Well, I think there's too much government intrusion and political intrusion into capitalism, and anybody who's an entrepreneur who would probably agree with that statement. It's an opinion. But when you look at, 80% of the jobs, last I checked, were created by companies of under 50 employees, right? Yeah. Amazon, those guys aren't the ones that maybe they're doing hiring. They're not hiring like the small business guy, right? So I don't think, I think there's not enough being done to support like small businesses. A bit of a free market guy. So how somebody can loan money to $100,000 somebody to go to college, okay, and get a degree in dance theory, right? They can't pay it back, or philosophy. You can't pay it back. I might know what's the job market for knowing what the sound of one hand clapping, right? But nobody's like, but you can't pay that back. Now, why do the universities do that, right? It's because they're getting the money from the government, right? And that's why. And then you look at like my kid's college education. I'm finishing up my 3rd kid through college. College education was up about 8 to 10% a year every year. And where there's a stagnant economy, where there's no inflation, well, why does school go up that much?
Yeah. They're just being crippled. They're being crippled with these loans and coming into the job marketplace, they
can't declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
But those loans will follow them as long as they live, right? And they don't understand. And how could they at 18 years old? What's it going to take to pay those loans back?
Yeah, it's tough.
Right. And that in and of itself is going to be, that's money they could have spent maybe starting a business or something else, or, so that's probably the next finance bubble that's going to burst at some point in time. These just crippling, debilitating student loans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the pushback is then all college should be free, like college is free.
Hey, the School of Hard Knocks is.
Oh, no kidding.
Expensive one.
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
we may have digressed a bit. Okay.
Yeah. So, obviously we have opinions, and maybe, Elizabeth, you can share some of your opinions because you got college age kids that are, bright and smart and doing what they need to do to get their educations. And now, creating some kind of opportunity out there, whether it's to become entrepreneurs, franchisees, or even, folks that are kind of wired to be corporate ladder climbers. And that's obviously another way to kind of build your future and your destiny. And those are all choices that are available to these young people. But it is tough when you come out in debt, and you come out and there's not those same opportunities as what I had as a baby boomer. Definitely not the same opportunities for these generations as what I had.
Yeah, well, and I've got three. Well, one just graduated. I have two in college. One's going in next year. We have 5 kids, so
wow, well done.
Our 4th one is going into college next year, and it is. I mean, and ours are all hardworking. We've never paid for their gas. They have to contribute to their cars. They have jobs. Every single one of them has had a job since they were 16. But it is the difference between coming out of school now and when I came out of school and when Rebecca came out of school. With the pandemic, my kids are feeling the stress of that. They don't know what, and they're not old enough, I've said this before, to know about our ability to recover as a nation or as an economy. And so they are terrified. They have a lot of fear of their futures being secure. And I don't think it's illegitimate fear. My one child's taking a semester off because he's a music major. He's in music business, and he's decided maybe that's not the smartest thing. I told him, if you think you're on the wrong path, then take a break and switch, or take a minute. You're investing in the next 40 years of your life. He's brilliant. And he's a brilliant musician, but he can't make any money right now because all the clubs are closed.
Yeah, he come hang out with me in Nashville.
Yeah, well, he's actually looking to get an internship there, but nothing is in person. And it's just a whole different thing. I have very young, very smart, very hardworking children. They're not the kind who are wasting an education or not looking to work. They're pretty self-sufficient at young ages. And it's, sometimes those kids get a bad rap, but I've witnessed the fact that they are on the ball. I mean, my daughter at the Washington Post has done nothing but succeed. Yeah. So it's an interesting time to try to parent young adults through a situation like this. And in the first stimulus, they were left out.
Right.
We couldn't claim them if they were over 17, which 4 of ours were, but they didn't get stimulus money independently of us. So they had this gap. So for children like mine who are mostly self-supporting, that was a struggle. And they were mad. One of them particularly was mad about it. He's like, I've got a job and I'm working, I'm paying taxes, and we still claim that one as a dependent. So they're learning a lot about how government directly impacts them and what kind of power they have to change things. So
do you think, Joe, based on some of what Elizabeth is sharing here, that we're going to see a surge in entrepreneurship in these younger generations and in women?
As long as I've been in franchising, the USA Today, I don't remember those poll, there's always like 75% of people say they want to start a business someday.
Right.
But somewhere between 13 and 18% of the population is self-employed.
Yeah, it's like everybody wants to write a book.
I've heard questions like, the millennials are the most entrepreneurial generation in history because they all say they want to start a business, but how many of them do? Mm-hmm. Now, what I do think is I think a career might be a bunch of little side hustles, right? So Uber, we don't have enough side hustles in franchising that people could legitimately start and grow in a part-time business. One would be janitorial, right? Because it's done in the evening. People could work during the day. They can quality control at night. They buy accounts, start with one and legitimately grow and scale, and then move it into a full-time gig. And that's why these janitorial franchises have gotten so big, because it's a very underserved market. And it also in hair care, right? Like Great Clips, right? They just specialize in sport clips. They put systems together where people can run a salon on evening hours after done with work and not have to take money out of the salon to pay the household expenses, right? So once they get about 4 or 5, it's thrown off, 100, 200 grand or more, then is the transition to full-time, and they can aggressively scale. And they've all built systems for the side hustle. And I would like to see more lower entry cost businesses, more side hustle, more equity build. like the average franchise system, restaurant retail sells about 2.5, 3 times earnings. So
Right.
if you like, how many businesses that you're starting, let's say for $600,000, throw off 200 grand? Not
Yeah.
a lot, right? But if it does, you're not building equity, you're breaking even, right? Because you just sell it for what you risked. Now, if you finance it, cash on cash return, there's ways to build equity, but I'm just saying that you're not really building real equity, you're just retiring debt.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd like to see more businesses that drive equity, more side hustle type opportunities. Yeah, more opportunities that women can get involved in where there's no glass ceiling.
Right.
Right. Or minorities can get involved in where there's, they've got the same opportunity as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think franchisors are addressing that? The female market, the minority market, these younger people who are more interested in work-life balance and finding ways to do side hustles while they're at university. Do you think as franchisors, we could do a better job there?
Well, I think a franchisor has a model, right? And a business model, and there's people that fit that don't fit. So I see it as more as a supply problem, okay, than a franchisor problem. There's just that we don't have enough. There's too many franchisors relative to how many people buy a franchise, right? So I think there's supply demand disequilibrium. I would say there's too many franchisors relative to demand. So Fran data, and then my experience would support that, would say there's probably about 15,000 new franchisees joining systems a year. 12,000 might be a light year, 17,000 might be a good year, but there's 4,000 brands, right? We have the same number of buyers and twice as many brands as there are, and there's about 250 to 350 new brands come out every year in most years, right? Without increasing the buyers, right? So franchising has got, when the franchisor is selling at 10 times earnings and a franchisee is selling at 2.5, who's got the better deal?
Right.
Right. So I just don't think there's enough businesses out there to address some underdeveloped markets, like the pure investor.
Yes.
Right. Like I got 10 million I want to invest, or $1 million I want to invest. I don't want to work it. If I worked it, I probably wouldn't have the 10 million or 5 million, or pick the number. Right. But almost every business I know in franchising does require the owner to have some role in the business, or the investor. I like the Chick-fil-A model, right? Where they're backing the particular, it's more of an operating partnership. I do business with Sideback, and they specialize in operating partnerships, right? It's where the operator would come up with some money, Sideback backs it, right? The owner gets salary, and then they split profits 50-50.
That's beautiful.
Right? That's what Chick-fil-A does on some level, right? So I think there's like the royalty model off of sales when a franchisee is living off of profits, right? The franchisee bears the risk. The franchisor gets the bulk of the reward. Franchisees living off an EBITDA percentage, if they're lucky, if they get 15 or 20 cents to the dollar flown through the bottom line. Franchisors have 40 to 60% flow through to the bottom line, sometimes 75% or more on incremental royalties. The franchisor model and the franchisee's model, there's disequilibrium. The franchisee bears the risk, the franchisor gets more of the reward, which is why there's so many franchisors. And so relative to the number of franchisors, so few franchisees. I think at some point in time, we're going to have to reinvent the model where the franchisor has more risk. Okay. Franchisee has more reward. Like if a franchisor is going to sell at 10, well, there should probably be some roll-up opportunities for the franchisor, roll up franchisees and help them sell their businesses at 5 or 6 times earnings instead of the 2.5 or 3, which if they were part of a bigger roll-up, they could do, right? Yeah. I understand the headaches aligned with that. I'm just talking theory. And then the lower entry cost side hustle that people could scale. I just don't see enough on the supply side,
right?
Other than kind of janitorial and those types of businesses.
Wow, you got a lot of opinions, Joe Mathews, and we love them. We love them. Here's what I love about you also. is you have these distinct parts of you, this business brain, this business mind, the strategic thinker that you just demonstrated here, and I've grown to love over the years. But you also have another side of you, that's the spiritual side that plays right into your business and how you work with franchisors. I'm wondering if you would allow the rest of the world here to see this spiritual side and tell us why this is so important in your life.
Well, if God exists, right, then there is nothing more important, right? Right. So one of the things, in business, the old saying, like there's no atheists in foxholes.
No,
I don't see a lot of atheists during the ramp up either, right? Of a small business. As a small business guy, do you know how many things I can't control?
Yeah.
Like, like my business, I don't look like $1 million worth of payroll. Like if I wasn't, if I didn't have God in my life, I wouldn't sleep at night. Like, I don't know how. Every day I wake up, I'm shocked I can make payroll. Like and during the when COVID hit, we probably lost 30% of our revenues in a week, and then it held flat. And I didn't have to. I let all the people that we work with. We have a great team of people, institutional geniuses, domain area experts. We didn't have to let anybody go. We kept everybody on full salary except for me. But like that's just for me. That's like a God thing. And everybody talks about how important purpose and intention is in business. Simon Sinek, he's got like the power of why, the most watched TED talk.
Right.
Right. He talks about, working with intention, why you doing it. Well, if you really look at it, absent of God, there is no why. So if you want to have a why, you got to take it all the way back to the beginning, before there was anything, right? So everything, everybody here, everything we have, everything we're seeing was either has an origin, right? So everything that exists has a cause. So if the universe exists, well, what's at the cause, right? So it either was created from nothing, by no one, for no purpose. So therefore, everything is random and everything is chaos. Or like, one of my favorite quotes in the Bible is John 1:1. It says, in the beginning was the Logos. It says the literal translation would be the word, but the Greek is really the Logos. And that meant something very specific to the Greeks. In the beginning was the original mind and intention and creative genius of God. And then God spoke and everything was created, right? So everything, and if you look at the evidence, like, the planets aren't slamming together, right? Someone once said, I'm not a physicist, but all the laws governing the universe could fit on one type page of paper. Like E equals MC squared. Simple, right? Simple. So the point is, if you believe in purpose, if for even there be a purpose, you got to have a God. God's part of the equation. Okay, and then if God's part of the equation, he's either then you have the good and evil conversation, right? I would say God is good. So if God is good, then by definition he can't be bad, right? Now bad stuff happens in the world, so I would say there's another influence, right? And I would say, like, I don't believe, like the Hindus believe, that good and evil are equal opposite forces. I believe in the Judeo-Christian good conquers evil, right? So if you believe God, then you got purpose, you have intention, and you have a force for good, right? So even if now, how do you know good exists? Even if you're an atheist, you don't see atheists going around killing people, right? Even atheists would live, right, as if killing people were wrong, and that there's a higher standard of right, wrong, good, or bad, and they just do the right thing like everybody else, trying to do the right thing. So I do think that God put us all here for a reason. He even put brands here for a reason. He equipped people with certain talents, and he expects us to use them. Right. And I don't think I think I have a particular skill set, and it seems to lend itself well to franchising. But I didn't ask to be skilled. I didn't even ask to be born. Right. I didn't ask to die, and I won't ask to die. Okay. So what makes me think I'm really in control of that middle piece too? Right. And I don't think when we talk about purpose and intention, a lot of people say, well, they try to invent, and it's like, I get it. Okay. But if you're designed, a toaster is designed to make toast. So me saying I want to be a poet would be like the same thing, the toaster saying I want to be a dancer. That's great, but maybe you're not wired for that. Right. So I do think we're all designed for a reason. We're all unique like snowflakes. I think God has us to do a work, and that's designed us into existence that only we can do. Right. And I don't think we have to invent it. I think we are invented for it. And I don't think we have to find it. I think it finds us. And I don't think we create it. I think it creates us. Like you said, you have 5 kids, right? Did you remember when you had your first child and you were a mother for the first time?
Forget it.
Yeah. Did you invent mother, or did mother invent you in that moment?
Well, and what you're saying with 5 children, and we're a blended family. So the 3 boys came with me and 2 girls came with him. They're all completely different.
Yeah.
And so when you look at children who were raised in basically the same fashion, clearly somewhat different, but they're such individuals.
Yes.
And I think I had a talk with one of them who wanted so badly to play football to please his dad. And he's 5'11", and he's lucky if he weighs 140 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 22 and his metabolism is but he's gifted at seeing things in space. So when he got tested for academic things, the doctor was like, golf would be great for him. Tennis, things that you can.
Pickleball.
Pickleball. But he kept trying to push himself to play football. And at 10 years old, it was flag football. And, kids at that age start to shoot up, and this big old kid bumped into him, and he was black and blue. And I finally was like, you're really, really good at golf. Maybe you should lean in more toward that. Like, let's pick something that you can be satisfied at and excel at and use your gifts at. He's actually calling me right now. Isn't that funny?
Nice.
But that's important. I think helping your children, helping your franchisees, helping people in business find where those gifts lie. And I've said this before, when I feel like I'm not on my path, if I feel like I've strayed, like somebody says, hey, do this, and I go, okay, and it's not what I should be doing, it doesn't go well. I don't feel like I perform as well. I'm not as happy. It seems catastrophic at one time or another, and then you get back on your path.
Yeah.
So I think helping your people in your life find what that is. And I think that's what the search is for. What is my purpose? If you're not in touch with yourself, which a lot of adults are not self-aware, I have discovered. And kids clearly are not self-aware.
No, say it isn't so. Yeah.
But I think that's the search we're all looking for. And when it's
an inside out job.
It is. It really is. And
you gotta look in, and you gotta, in my world, you look up too.
Yeah.
You're looking it up. If you ever want to read a great book on that, the 2 most impactful books, I quoted the Bible, but Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. He did a whole lifetime study on that. Mm-hmm. So Viktor Frankl, it's interesting. So he was an Austrian psychiatrist. So if you like this, so psychiatrists are also MDs, right? So they have the distinction of how the mind works. They have the distinction of the body because they're MDs, and then they know the mind-body connection. So they're really interesting people. So he he came after Freud. So if you follow psychological thought, Freud came up with what they call the pleasure principle, right? So he would say, people move towards pleasure away from pain. And we see that in franchising, right? Yes, why do you want to start a business? Well, I hate my boss. So pain starts the journey. Mm-hmm. But it's not big enough avoidance of pain to have anybody invest some significant amount of capital and change their life like that, right? Then this guy Adler came and he said, the pleasure principle is demonstrably false. because some people will invite short-term pain for the long-term gain. So weightlifting would be an example of that, right? So he would say people really aren't motivated by pleasure or pain. They're more motivated by control or avoid being controlled. Now that's the entrepreneur, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. But you know, what do they both have in common? What's at the center of that would be self, right?
Right.
Right. So Viktor Frankl would say, no, there's something bigger than that. He goes, that's what you'll default to if you don't have purpose. Now, he would define purpose as a person, an ideal, or a cause bigger than self, outside of self, that you're even willing to die for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the purpose would just envelop you. And give you an example of that. I saw this. It was like, I always had problems sleeping, you know. So I remember watching this infomercial. The guy was trying to sell karate videos at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm watching this guy with Danny Bonaducci, you know, Danny from the Partridge Family,
Yeah.
you know, is the guy, you know, that's the talking head, and they're talking about karate and taekwondo, and this guy was saying, who was the master, he was saying, okay, he's doing a visualization exercise for Danny Bonaducci. He said, you know, picture, okay, the worst city that you've ever been in, the worst street you've ever been on in that city, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're out there all by yourself and you can't find your car. And then a gang of people approach you. They want your money, you give it to them, but then they start beating up on you. You know, what do you feel? And the answer is like, you know, fear, concern, and then how do you respond? You know, you cover up, you run away, right? And then he said, okay, same scenario, except this time picture you're with a person who's living or dead, whose life you value more than your own. Okay, now you're in the same city, same street, same time of night, you can't find your car. You get there, they ask you for their money, and then they start beating up on that person that you love. What shifts?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're no longer in self-protection, are you? Right? Because somebody's messing with your purpose. Right?
Yeah.
And they better put you in the morgue because that's where they're going. Right? They better put you there first.
Right.
And so Viktor Frankl would say the problem with humanity is we play too small. That we just haven't found that purpose or that cause or that person or that promise or that commitment that we make to ourselves or humanity that's big enough to envelop us all, the whole being. That would be me or you. Mm-hmm. And he would say when you operate from there, okay, you're infused with energy, you're infused with creativity, you're infused with power, you're resilient, and you're your highest and best self. You know, so one time I have this really good friend. Serendipitously, more evidence of God that this guy would even be friends with somebody like me. So he runs the Albert Ellis Institute, which is like the premier psychological institute in the world. And he's got three PhDs and I don't know how many master's degrees. And one time I asked him, I said, what do you think is the biggest threat to humanity? And his answer was self-esteem training. I said, what?
Oh my
God. And he said, no, something. And I said, well, defend that. And he said, Joe, think of all the problems you've ever had in your life. How many of it is because you weren't thinking about yourself enough?
Oh my gosh, a me culture here. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he was saying it's just all that. He goes, so self-esteem is the worst thing you do. And then he told me, he goes, just so you know, he goes, you know who measurably has the most self-esteem out of all classes of people? That would be the inmates in maximum security prison that are in the top of the pecking order that can beat up everybody. He goes, they have great self-esteem. They're sociopaths and they're psychotic, but their esteem intact. That always stuck with me. So yeah, so I think finding something in business always gave me something independent of and higher than self that's worthy of going to work. That's one of the reasons why I think we feel like in our we share all our intellectual property, right? So I wrote, I don't know, probably 90 articles on how-to articles on franchising, entrepreneurship, because I feel like that's what we're called to do. Just one of my partners, this guy Harry Loyal, just passed away a couple months ago. We just said, he always said, leave the campground better than you found it. So us giving away all our trade secrets at Franchise Performance Group, that's us leaving franchising, franchisors and the franchisees best we can, kind of better than we found them. And for me, that was worthy enough purpose to keep me going for 35 years. And it's worthy enough to keep me going tomorrow.
So you don't see the things that you've created, the intellectual property you created, as something to hoard and to license and to create a royalty for. You see it as part of your purpose. You see it as part of what you're called to do.
Rebecca, that's I'm going to share something I probably wasn't going to. So the answer is yes, I don't see it that way. So, so I had a couple different callings, like, when God's waking you up. So the first time was 9/11. So on the 3 o'clock in the morning on 9/11, voice of God in my kitchen, audible, out loud, 360 degrees around me, male voice. Sorry, franchising for women. It was a male voice. Clear as a bell. Yeah, I know, right? Told me 2 words: get writing. And at that time, I'd never written anything, like nothing. And I lived in the Berkshires, so I was like, get a writer. They're like a dime a dozen. Like the guy down the street from me had 2 Pulitzer Prizes. Get him, right? But it was the weirdest calling. I was like, get writing. 9/11. Like, where did that come from? And I just sat with it, like, but it's God's voice, and you don't want to say no. So it's like I was telling God, like, I have nothing to say, like nothing. Tell me something. And then he just started. And then, now he fast forwards from 9/11. I've written 6 books, about 90 articles, almost all inspired. Some of it comes from me, some of it doesn't. But one of the worst days I've ever had, Rebecca, I'm going to answer your question now. The second time I heard from God, when I started my business, I started as a franchise sales training company. And I jumped on the CFE program. I was one of their first instructors. So I built FPG starting as a franchise sales training company. And I thought I had the gold standard franchise sales training program. It really took off. And I'm sitting in my office in the Berkshires. I'm really proud of myself. And then all of a sudden God says, that's not your intellectual property. That's mine. Put it out on the web and show everybody where this property lives. Now, this was before there was such thing as social media and anybody talked about content streams and
Right.
like none of that ever existed. There was no language for it. I just knew I was a consultant. I was out of business. I remember walking to my house and the person said to me, how's your day? I said, sucks. Well, why? I said, because the voice of God just told me to take all my intellectual property and put it online. She goes, well, what's going to happen? I said, I'm going to be out of business. Well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I just know, why would anybody do business with me? So I put it all out there, and the phone has never stopped ringing. And that's where I got, so a lot of times in people in franchising, they knew I got on with now we call content streams early, and one of the first. I think I was visionary and genius. Hell no. Kicking and screaming. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. Right? But it worked out, not because, not even because I wanted to do it, because to your point, God declared it community property, it's not mine. Yeah.
He created it. He gave it to you. In the scriptures, they call that first fruit. He asked you to provide the first fruit, bring it back.
Yeah, and I wasn't too tickled about that.
No,
most
of us aren't, because obviously we created it. We're so wise. We're so smart, right? We created it, but this was the first fruit.
Yeah.
Which then became seed for all the other harvests that you have had. But it is ego oftentimes that holds us back from sharing all that we are, because somehow our pride thinks it's worth something, or we own it, or whatever.
Yeah, what do they call ego? Edging God out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Joe, We could talk, and I know Elizabeth probably has a billion things she wants to ask too. We could talk forever. So we're going to have you back because we're out of time. But before we do, could you let people know how they could get hold of Joe Mathews and learn more about what you're up to?
Lose my number. Kidding. It's franchiseperformancegroup.com is where you would find all our intellectual property that we just talked about. And then if anybody wants to say hi, cell phone number, don't mind, 860-309-1484. That's 860-309-1484.
Hey, you get two for the price of one.
If you order now, you get a free set of Ginsu knife. They slice, they dice. They can cut through this onion without shedding a tear.
Oh my gosh.
Impressive.
Perfect.
All right. Joe, thank you so much. That was such an interesting conversation. And I think your insight is very valuable and unique in a lot of ways. So thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
All right. Thanks for having me. Have a great day. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
You too.
What do you think is the #1 challenge for franchisors? You got it, getting the right fit franchisee. And as you know, poor fit franchisees are often poor performers. Poor fit franchisees cost more to train and support. Poor fit franchisees are rarely satisfied or compliant, which can lead to validation issues. Not a good place to be. But now there is a solution. Zoracle Profile's scientific spot-on match program. Working with top broker groups in franchising, Zoracle has created a platform that scientifically matches the broker's candidate to the right fit franchise brand. Spot On Match predicts the compatibility, performance, and viability of a prospective franchisee. Spot On Match gives the franchise development team a data-driven and scientific approach to selling franchises. This is how it works. Zoracle works with each franchisor to establish their top performer blueprint. This research assesses current franchisees to determine the key psychographic indicators that separate high performers from mid to low performing franchisees. The final result of the research is the brand's Eclipse report, which compares prospective franchisees to a franchise system's high performers. Finally, brokers are running a spot-on profile on each of their franchise prospects. These profiles are then scientifically bumped up against the franchisor's high performer algorithms, and the match process begins. Dashboards are built for the franchisor and the broker to make sure the process is smooth and trackable. Right fit matches instantly. Find out how you can be a spot-on match member. Save time. Stop guessing. Start matching. Call Zoracle Profiles.
Welcome to Women in the Know, where we discuss everything from politics and policy to relationships and marketing. We take the experiences that we have had in our lives and in our businesses and our interviews and share them with you and discuss so that hopefully we can learn a little something along the way. So Rebecca, we were talking to Joe Mathews, who believes that all franchisees are entrepreneurs, which is not necessarily the common opinion. So we wanted to delve into that a little bit more deeply. What is your personal opinion of that ideal?
You'd almost have to look up the definition of an entrepreneur, right? To kind of say that. There's no doubt in the world of franchising, a franchisor largely would say they don't want someone with too much entrepreneurial spirit. That entrepreneurial spirit makes it more difficult for them to follow systems and to embrace systems. And franchising is about systems and processes. So I frequently, with Zoracle here, my franchisors say, we don't want the entrepreneurial type. However, I do see Joe's point and agree with it to a large extent, that an entrepreneur is someone who takes financial risks to run, operate, manage a business. And a franchisee, even with a solid system in place, is putting their future on the line. That's a lot of commitment. And of course, in my opinion, a certain level of risk. Is it less risk to buy a franchise versus start something? We truly believe that, having been in franchising, but I still think that franchisee is an entrepreneurial who is running and managing his own business and taking those financial risks to build it. That's what an entrepreneur is. Is he coming up with the idea, right? Is he inventing something? Not likely. The franchisor has done that, but still, yeah, I would agree that he or she is, to a large extent, an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think so too. And my husband's a franchisee, and I think that, he's running his business. And I think it also is, like Joe said, dependent somewhat. And we discussed the stages of growth and that kind of thing. Leo Goldberger, when he came on, he's one of those people who starts a lot of businesses, and is entrepreneurial and a visionary, but in his early stage franchise systems, he seeks out people who have that entrepreneurial spirit because he needs the creativity. His brands are younger. So they are not to a place where every single thing is every T is crossed and every I is dotted. They are still forming processes and systems and developing as they grow. So he wants that kind of person who wants to engage and wants to participate in that process. And as Joe said, if you're with a McDonald's, you want somebody who's going to follow the plan, right? So I think there is a difference in terms of creativity, but I don't think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be completely built that way.
Agreed.
Some people are cookie cutter. They've run one business, even not as a franchise. They've been a business owner. They can translate those skills to another business and not necessarily be creative in the process of it if they've got something that works. So I don't know that that's how you need to define it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think we have confused this idea of being an entrepreneur with also being an innovator and being a creator. And that's not necessarily so. And various degrees of that creativity and that innovation is based on, as you said, on the stage of growth of that franchisor. Early stage franchisors allow a whole lot more creativity and innovation. Larger ones, it's not a good idea to be crazy innovative or creative, but that doesn't take away this idea that they are indeed entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they're starting a business from nothing. Basically, they don't have a business. They have a model.
They have a model,
but they're starting it from scratch in terms of customers.
Putting their money in it.
Yeah. They're putting their own money in. So yeah, I mean, I would tend to look at them as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So maybe there's like degrees.
I think it's a spectrum.
Right. There's a spectrum. That's the word. There's a spectrum. I'm on that crazy side over here, crazy entrepreneurial side, and others are over here. And what they're particularly good at is scaling and replicating and leveraging. Why reinvent the wheel? That's kind of silly, right?
Well, and you can do that as a business owner who's not a franchisee. If you have worked in a business that works and you replicate it somewhere else, just because they're not necessarily day-to-day involved, you might not be the creative thinker, but you can still take what you've learned and start the business. Right. So I think that, and really, does it matter? I mean, the fact is you're a business owner, you're running your thing.
Therefore, you're an entrepreneur.
There you go.
I think we decided that one.
Yes, we would love to hear your opinions in the comments, see who agrees and who disagrees and why. So like, subscribe, and share, and give us your input. The Franchise Woman is a bi-monthly digital magazine that empowers women as they navigate the franchising industry by providing relevant news, tools, advice, and inspiration. We are a resource for women who are seeking to own their own businesses, improve their existing businesses, find creative solutions, and take advantage of franchise opportunities. We feature women in the business who best exemplify our ideals and have something to teach our readers. In addition to our exclusive articles relating to the female entrepreneur, we also feature brands that are geared for women. Women have become the fastest growing sector in business ownership and have become a powerful, influenceable force fueling the economy. The Franchise Woman will give you the news that is relevant to you to help you navigate the path of successful franchise ownership. By women, for women, and about women. We are the Franchise Woman. Join us today at www.thefranchisewoman.com.
Welcome to Ask Beck and Liz, where no topic is off limit. We want to answer your questions about business, life, and everything in between. Send your questions to ask@beckandliz.com. That is ask@beckandliz.com. Elizabeth, the question that I have for us to ponder today actually comes from a conversation we had with Joe Mathews, where he was talking about purpose and meaning and significance, and finding what that is. Specifically, he was talking about Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, which for those of you who haven't read that book, for me, I think it was required reading when I was in high school. But basically, a psychiatrist who goes through the Holocaust as a Jewish prisoner, and how he survives. And then he talks about the reason he survived is because his life had greater meaning. It had a significance. And so he went on to write this book, and it's inspired a lot of us to look more deeply at our day-to-day struggles, or why are we here, meaning of life kind of questions. So I thought it was an interesting topic that Joe had brought up. And sometimes I think we forget to stop and really ask ourselves, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Why am I going through this struggle?
Just the little questions in life. Yeah.
Just little stuff like that.
Well, it's true. And I think that when you go through, I mean, clearly we cannot relate to concentration camps, but we can relate to pain on whatever level. And I think when you're going through it, you're trying to figure out why. I mean, sometimes you can beat yourself up about it. One of our mantras in our house is that you can't rationalize the irrational when dealing with people. And so stop beating yourself up and trying to. But I do think that you always look for a reason or a purpose or a meaning or something that you can take from it that makes it less unbearable, I guess.
Right.
Because if something happens for no good reason, then it's easy to feel defeated. So if you can find something that you're getting from it, whether it's that you realize your strength, or you can help someone else through a struggle, or whatever that is. And it really harkens to our Gift of the Struggle videos, where we ask women to
It does. Yeah,
tell
you're
us
right.
when it's some of their most painful moments in life, they're sharing with us, but they're sharing with us that there were gifts that came from those struggles to help other people be able to put their fingers on those things, or to help other people say there is hope, there is ability to survive, there is something that you can gain from this that doesn't make it feel wasted or fruitless or hopeless.
Right. Right. It's so easy during struggles and pain and suffering to go, why me? Rather than, what's the meaning in this? What's the significance of this? What's the purpose of this? What am I to gain from this? And and even something bigger, as Joe pointed out, the God within that moment, and how that's bringing forward all that we are in that moment. So it's that shifting the question of why me or why this into something more meaningful. So looking at every situation as whether it's a teacher or an opportunity, or some way to develop part of our character, whatever it is, if we can find that meaning in something, that significance for our lives and for that particular process. As you said, so many of our folks that allowed us to interview them on the Gift of the Struggle they may have not found it in the moment. It may have been in hindsight.
Yeah, most don't find it right in the moment because it's too painful. But I think why me can be such a dangerous question, and you can get stuck in that space. And I think someone said to me one time, why not you? Like, I mean, what does that even mean? Why not? It's a
you
expression that
special?
serves no purpose. It serves no purpose other than to wallow. Not that we haven't all felt it, but you need to get past that little thought real quick, and into finding what it is that you have to gain from the experience. Even if you don't know what it is, like I've talked about this before, sometimes you don't know what it is, but knowing that you will eventually know, it sometimes can be enough to get you through that.
I think that's the key. What you just said, no doubt a prisoner in a concentration camp isn't saying, oh, glory to God, look at the meaning in this. I don't think
Look at how strong I'm becoming. I can be starved and I'm still here.
Yeah. And how my character is being refined. I don't think most of us are that strong or that evolved or self-actualized to truly be able to say that. But to your point, if we can at least keep in mind that at some point we are going to see the significance and the meaning of that in our lives and the whole purpose of our lives in general, I think that alone allows us to go through it with some, I think you called it hope in another conversation you and I had about it, some hope.
Yeah, I mean, without hope, that's when you really get into trouble. So I think that's what these stories serve to help us with, is to hold on to that hope when you feel like there is none. Because when you see someone else who has gone through something that you've gone through or worse, it gives you that sense of peace that you can get through it too.
Yeah, so true. Well, I'm curious as to our listeners and if they've had experiences when they've got into the why me, or experiences or what they do in their minds to bring them back to center and say, there's got to be meaning, there's got to be purpose, there's got to be some significance in whatever this is and in my life, how they go about doing that, or some aha moments maybe that our listeners have had through those experiences. We'd love to hear more about that in the chat down below. And of course, you want to follow us and you want to join the coterie so you can listen to the gift of the struggle, because these women have some incredible stories that they're sharing and opening up their hearts to us.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Love it. Yes, indeed. So in the meantime, thank you guys for joining us today, where passion and purpose collide. Profits are made and relationships are forged. This is Beck and Liz signing off and wishing you another purpose-filled and profitable week.